Back in 2018, while most of us were figuring out oat milk and pretending to understand Web3, someone at LSE was quietly building something massive. Not just another campus startup program, but a global community with 20 international chapters, thousands of students, and alumni supported mentorship that starts in the school and the mental health baked into the DNA. That someone is LJ Silverman, who leads LSE Generate, the Entrepreneurship Center at the London School of Economics. And she is joining us today to talk about what it really takes to build founders, not just ventures. Welcome to another episode of School to Startup, brought to you by Tracxn, a leading private market intelligence platform that's been tracking the startup world for over a decade now. Through our university partnership programs, we work closely with institutions that are building the next wave of founders. And this series is all about the people making that happen from inside the university wall. My name is Harish. I'll be your host today, and joining us is none other than LJ Silverman. LJ, welcome to the
That's
show.
good. All good.
Let's start at the beginning, right? So, how did all this kick off? Like, what made you decide you built something like LSE Generate?
That's really good question. Okay, so I never imagined going into academia. When I finished university, I loved the entertainment industry. So I was really interested in film production, TV, and I actually worked in TV editing for quite a while and did some children's television programming. I really wanted to be a children's TV presenter, actually. I really enjoyed my time in academia, but I probably took it for granted thinking about it. I went to Cambridge, which obviously is an amazing university, and loved it. But I don't think it was until afterwards when I realized how lucky and fortunate I was to be in a place like that. The academics that were teaching us were the kind of best in their field. The people that I was surrounded by were highly intelligent, interesting, curious, which I think is one of the most important skills of today, to kind of hone. And I didn't really ever think about working in the university. I have always loved working with young people, though. And as I got older, I was always an au pair and I always wanted children. But I was really fascinated by that really formative stage, when you're kind of between 18 and say 25, your most kind of defining decade. And as I started coaching more and more students through careers coaching, I did some work with recruitment as well. I started up my own company, my own recruitment company. And then I had an opportunity to work at LSE. And I'd just been running my own company, but I'd had a young baby. Obviously, all babies are young. I'd had a baby. And it just became quite difficult to manage my own business and to look after this small child. So the opportunity came up to work at LSE, and really I've never looked back. So I've been there now 14 years. LSE is an amazing place because it is, like I said, this kind of skill around curiosity. You're surrounded by curious, stimulated people, that on the whole are focused on the betterment of society. And with everything that is going on in the world, it's so amazing to be part of a community where they are both like-minded and wanting to grow, which is essentially what university is all about. It's an amazing community, and community for me is a group that decides to grow together, and that's what I have at LSE. So it's been amazing. Like, I've loved pretty much every day. There's the odd phone call and the odd Zoom call that I don't look forward to, but I think that's normal.
You've done voiceovers, worked in consultancy, even dabbed in TV. So, how did all those pieces come together to land you in this world of entrepreneurship and education?
So I think impact. Universities are the most incredible places to create impact, or to either stimulate a desire to create impact. I think I'm part of a university that approaches problems through a social sciences lens, so focuses on the human, that kind of individual and the collective, rather than just a widget, an app, a machine. And that is very different, but it's a trend that we notice Gen Z paying attention to. They come to us with their businesses that are in some way contributing to a better tomorrow. And that is very different from 14 years ago when you saw the odd one interested in the UNSD. Well, I don't even know if the UNSDGs were around then, but the UNSDGs, mission driven. They're still very hungry to earn money. They like the idea of earning quite a bit of money. But that doesn't mean that impact needs to be sacrificed. So it's kind of for profit, for purpose, walking in lockstep is what we see now. That is definitely a trend. There is a big trend at the moment within entrepreneurship around education. So education technology, there's a feeling, I think, just from the student body that actually the ways that we teach are no longer relevant. The ways that Gen Z think are very different with technology, etc. And so there needs to be a new way of approaching technology. We looked at it a little bit during COVID, but I think the reason that so many businesses send me their EdTech decks is because they're not satisfied with the way that schools and universities are teaching and the kind of curricula that they're teaching as well. And
Nice.
that's the other trend that I'm seeing as well. And again, this is kind of more in the West, but I imagine it's the same to some extent in the East as well, is the focus on mental health as well, and that is really significant. I mean, I called the doctor this morning actually to get a prescription for something, and usually they put you straight to the reception, but now they say you press 1 if you want to talk about your physical health and press 2 if you want to talk about your mental health. So it shows just how many people are facing these issues, and again, it came through COVID. It was kind of exacerbated during that, but I think that this generation is really focused on their health, physical and mental health. And so coming up with all different ways to support their peers, but also other generations around this. And then finally, and this I think is very new, and well, two things actually. One is leadership, so a different form of leadership, even though we don't always see it in the news at the moment. There's a desire and a real appetite to herald in a new form of leadership, which is more focused on empathy and community. And so that kind of more empathetic communal approach rather than the kind of historical, hierarchical and agentic approach to leadership, which is really refreshing. Again, not all cultures have adopted it yet, but I do think that's kind of coming. As I said, we don't see it in the news and it's not commonplace in certain countries still, but it definitely seems to be a trend, as you asked. And then finally, there was one more thing. I've totally forgotten. I'm sure it will come back to me. But yeah, they seem to be the trends at the moment that we're spotting. But it happens to everyone, and I think in terms of a kind of systems level change, the future of work, for example, is very closely linked to healthy aging. This idea that within your organization in a few years you're going to have up to 4, potentially 5 generations working under the same roof. So how do you create these age inclusive organizations? How do you adapt? How do you upskill on a digital level older generations? How do you tap into a kind of an underused market of the kind of 60, 70, 80 plus, given that people are going to be living longer? And that's a really exciting one that at LSE we're looking to deal with more and more.
And talking about the mental health itself, we don't hear enough about it in the startup space, but you have made it priority. So what does it actually look like to build mental health into an accelerator or a student founder journey?
As you know, we deal predominantly with entrepreneurs, and it is proven that entrepreneurs suffer more than other vocations, let's call it, when it comes to mental health. If you think about the entrepreneurial journey, it's up and down. It can often be quite lonely. It feels like a big slog with very few kind of triumphs and a lot of setbacks. And we know that burnout is commonplace within the entrepreneurial community. The other thing that I think is probably worth mentioning is neurodiversity, which is also linked to mental health when it's often undiagnosed or not understood by other members of the team, etc. And there's a much higher proportion we found of entrepreneurs that have a neurodiverse condition. And actually, there's not really environments and kind of structures through which they are fully supported at the moment. It's still quite nascent as a kind of concept, as a condition. And that is what tends to come up, the kind of mental health given based on kind of whether it's co-founder disputes, or the fact that it's not a 9 to 5, it's your baby. So you're working on it until 3 a.m, very few holidays. Financial runways are extremely short, especially when you're living in places like London, or imagine Dubai, where rent is a lot more expensive, Mumbai, where rent is a lot more expensive as well. There's expectations from family members for you to kind of join a big kind of multinational corporate, especially if they paid for your degree. And so that can also cause mental health problems. So we look at ways that we can best support that. A lot of it is through peer groups. So actually you don't feel as lonely when you're speaking about these things with others. We run retreats off site. We get the students off site and they spend time with experienced psychologists, but also founders that can share their own journeys. So you know that this is totally normal. Every success comes with a back catalogue of failures. We get them to talk about failure in a more healthy way. We've actually divided the budget and the program itself into 2 parts. One is product and service development, and the other one is founder development. And that's really changed from a kind of data point of view, the startup survival rate is much higher because you're focusing on those founders themselves. Very rarely is it the product that is the problem. It's usually a kind of a mindset thing. So we've kind of rehashed the program design based on that.
All right. So let's zoom out for a bit. Looking ahead a few years, how do you see the role of universities evolving in the startup space?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really difficult question to answer because at the moment, we just don't know the impact of things such as climate, AI. How is this going to impact organizations? How is it going to impact individuals? Are the graduates that we've seen leaving university in the last week, are they even going to go into a job that still exists? And that's the big question. I don't know. I don't think anyone knows the answer. But we're in a time where things are changing so quickly that I feel like the skills that are really important in this kind of age of uncertainty are adaptability, flexibility, emotional intelligence, those kind of life skills or soft skills, some people call them, that you don't really learn at university or school. Actually, they're not part of the national curriculums generally. And what we're trying to do at LSE is to change that and encourage educational institutions to actually be teaching this to kids because it's so vital. At the moment, they're teaching how to code, but in a while, you won't need coders anymore, right? You'll need people who understand the importance of, I don't know, anti-bias when prompting an AI bot. You need people to understand how to get the balance right between technology and humanity. You need people to regulate. All of those skills require those very human skills. I think the other way that things are going as well is the importance placed on doing things with your hands. So you're thinking about the kind of skills that are still going to be really valuable. So things like art restoration or fixing clothes, those kind of things are really, really important. Plumbing, those kind of activities that actually people don't, in a way, kind of from a snobbish kind of angle, don't respect as much, but they're the things that actually AI is not going to be able to replicate yet. And I think that's really important. So I think it's the other thing as well is kind of high-end sales, so kind of B2B sales, where a lot of money is being transferred. People want humans rather than kind of bots to actually be guiding them through that process. So I think that's another thing. But yeah, having a plan B, I think, is important, and pushing back. Like, I think universities like ours, we want to be lobbying kind of government to actually not let technology take such a lead on this. We need regulation around it before it's too late. Like, it's the first kind of industrial revolution really, which isn't run by humans as much as actual kind of cyber physical beings, and that's quite scary to a certain extent.
There is this a shift happening where success isn't just about raising money anymore. What does successful entrepreneurship look like to you now?
Again, a good question. I think it is still about making money, for sure. But I think the way that you measure success is going to be very different now. So you're not necessarily always going to be focused on the VC model, which is focused on quick results, high returns. You want to see that kind of yield within the first few years. It's not necessarily going to be that. I think businesses are, or Gen Z particularly, is focused on more sustainable growth. and other funding streams as well. So, for example, not just VC, but angel investment, catalytic capital, patient capital, grants, those kind of things. There's a bigger focus on how to bootstrap or seed strap, as we call it now, as we call the kind of the next stage up. And I think, again, universities have a real responsibility to allow students to understand that actually VC is not the only way, and there's many different ways that you can build businesses. But entrepreneurship is not necessarily about the product anymore, it's about the mindset. So the kind of programs that we run are not necessarily just for entrepreneurs, and therefore anyone, given that the entrepreneurial mindset is the most sought after skill from any employer, what we're trying to do now is really to through the process of building a business or practicing some kind of business activity, kind of venture build to some extent, we want students to develop the skills that allow them to survive and thrive, hopefully, in any business scenario, whether that is a startup or a scale up or a government institution or a multinational.
Any student-led projects or ideas recently that made you stop and go, wow, this is exactly why we built this?
So one thing that I'm really proud of at LSE Generate is our focus on underrepresented communities. So I honestly believe that LSE can be a great equalizer, but historically and probably currently, it is still only the elite that have the highest chances of succeeding. Like, you still have the most awful kind of rates of statistics around funding for women of color is like 0.4%, which is crazy. And so we really have tried, understanding that we're in quite a privileged position, to try and support underrepresented communities. And we have a big female founder network now, and we've been able to secure funding for them, or give them the kind of toolkit for them to be able to secure funding. We have a big focus on neurodiversity, on 60 plus, so alumni that are nearing retirement and are looking to either start a business or to join some kind of non-exec positions on the startup board. LGBT, and did I mention? Yeah, neurodiverse. We're looking at socioeconomic as well next year. But I'm really, really interested in the kind of businesses that come out of those communities, where the kind of the odds are stacked against them, especially kind of femtech, so feminine technology, health tech related to women as well, where the data is just so much. There's not as much robust data points around women's health as men's, for all the reasons that we know. And so those businesses that are really looking to change that, I love supporting. It's not necessarily the unicorns. Like, LSE has some amazing, I think 26 unicorns that have come out of the school in the last few years, which is really impressive. But when I go home in the evening and kind of shut my laptop, the founders that I think about are the former, the ones that have really got to fight harder, but still come up with incredible business ideas that are scalable and sustainable at the same time.
All right. So, quick one here. What's one bold prediction you have for the future of entrepreneurship education?
I think we will, again, going back to healthy aging, I think we will see more founders starting up businesses much later in life, which I think is exciting at the moment. In the UK, it's kind of these 22-year-old kind of whiz kids that are sat in a WeWork. And I think the longer people live, and the more that a focus kind of sits within kind of a continuous learning, like curiosity, developing new skills, constantly upskilling. I think you'll see new kind of exciting businesses come from founders that are maybe in their 60s, etc., which is exciting. I think there's definitely going to be a kind of shift when it comes to how much time kids are spending on screens, and the kind of ways that technology companies can get them kind of high on the dopamine loop of social media apps. I think there will be more regulation around that. It's already being talked about a lot. And I feel quite strongly about that. I feel like young people are at the moment just guinea pigs for kind of Silicon Valley's, the big visions that they have to sell. And I feel like there will hopefully be some more regulation around that, and students, because I think if not, there'll be a kind of cognitive decline in young people, and that is definitely not what we want. But we're certainly seeing it at the moment. So I do think that there'll be a little bit more maturity around technology use. And hopefully it will be the startups that enable that as well. I'm quite confident, like startups are the most kind of nimble, agile outfits that can respond to these kind of trends. And so hopefully entrepreneurship, as we know, doesn't exist in a silo, but startups, along with government and some of the funding from corporates, can enable that transition so that we can bring up healthier children that can live longer.
And finally, what's one thing you wish every student knew before they started a venture, but no one tells them?
So I think two things. I think validate, make sure that there is someone that is going to buy your product. There is a need, and make sure it's a product that actually matters, that we need. Like, the problems in our world are so urgent that unless you're focusing on one of them, what is the point? So make your time kind of worthwhile. You live once, etc. But then I think education is important. It's the most important thing, but education combined with inspiration. So I would recommend that kids find role models that they look up to, that can mentor them or can influence them in a really positive way. And I think, given that on the TV, when we look at the news, the kind of global leaders aren't particularly inspiring as much as when we were younger. We have to look within our own local communities sometimes for those role models. But regardless of where you have to look for them, find one that you aspire to be a little bit more like, for all the right reasons, hopefully, and ask them for mentorship, for advice, report back to them, ask to be accountable to them as well. Because I think that when you're younger, it's the older kind of wisdom and inspired kind of insights that can be, the make or break of someone's career. So I think that is really important. Like, go out and network and be proactive to find people that are really important to you and get them to inspire and catalyze your business success.
That was incredible. As they honestly, 30 minutes isn't nearly enough to get all the wisdom, ideas, and the wild stories you have got from building something like LSE Generate. We have barely scratched the surface. Thank you for sharing your journey and for everything you're doing to make entrepreneurship more inclusive, more grounded, and way more human.
No problem. Take care.
And to everyone watching, if this sparks something for you, let us know. Drop a comment, share it with someone who's building something, and hit that like button if you enjoyed the episode. And hey, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you get notified when the next conversation drops. We've got more incredible voices coming your way. This is School to Startup. I'm Harish. Thanks for being here. Until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and maybe start something new.